Hi, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where we educate, enlighten, and entertain. Folks, I am so excited. I'm ready to jump right up off of my chair. I have a very special guest with me today. All my guests are special. Folks, I know everybody has to know about Bob Hope, unless you've been living under a rock, or you might be very, very young. But my guest today was the first female writer, staff writer for Bob Hope, helping to write his television shows, personal appearances, and military shows for 15 years. Her name is Martha Bolton. Martha was, and I can't even talk. So excited I am. Emmy-nominated writer and author of 88 books of humor and inspiration. She has received nominations for a Dove Award, WGA Award, and a Golden Scroll Merit Award for fiction. And Linda also, Hope, wrote this book with Martha Bolton, and Linda Hope is Bob and Delores' eldest daughter. And she is keeping her father's legacy going and helped produce his shows for over 20 years. And I want to welcome Martha Bolton to discuss Dear Bob.
Hi, Betsy. It's an honor to be on your show, and looking forward to talking about Bob Hope and the book.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor and privilege. So excited. I can't even, that's why I don't go by script. I can't even get my words out. But the book is Dear Bob, Bob Hope's Wartime Correspondence with the GIs of World War II, written and compiled by Martha Bolton with Linda Hope. Martha, that had to be so heart-touching to read all these letters. I would have been crying.
Oh, yeah, I was all the way through it. It was quite a project. During the height of the war, Bob was receiving 38,000 fan letters a week. So his secretary very meticulously kept these letters in very good shape, including his responses to them on, the old onion skin paper with the carbon paper and all that. And she was Marjorie Hughes, and she did a great job of keeping them intact. And they stayed at his house all the time that I was writing for him, and all the time that Linda was growing up, were these boxes and boxes of letters. And it was, when I got to go through them and read some of them, I realized what the historical significance, number one, and number two, the insight into Bob's heart and the GI's heart. And I talked with Bob. This was back when he was alive, and I talked with him and asked him if he had ever thought about putting them into a book, because they were so powerful. And he liked the idea, but he said, that they were so close to him that it would be hard for him to do it. But for me and to talk with Linda and his daughter, and so we did. We started meeting about the book and started working on it back then. And then things happen, and you get off onto another project and different things. But we never forgot about it, and I didn't, and she didn't either. And when unfortunately Bob passed in the meantime, but then a few years ago she emailed me and asked if I wanted to get back on the book, and I was so excited because I didn't know where it stood at that time, but we got back on it. And now at this time the letters were at the Library of Congress, so I went up there and finished the work, and then we passed the manuscript back and forth, and then the University Press of Mississippi came on board, and it was going to come out last year, but it came out this year instead, which after we all went through 2020, you know, we were ready for a dose of hope, and I think you know, Bob was always known for his timing, so I think his timing was perfect with the release of this in March. So that's the story of how it came about. Yeah.
And how many years did it take from the concept to it actually getting put out to the public?
Probably it was in the 90s, the mid-90s when we were working on it. So, yeah, over 20 years of it, you know, being around and adding to it little by little, and you know, just going through the letters and then picking them. That was the hardest part, was selecting which letters to put in, because the book kept growing and getting too big, and we'd have to edit it down, and then you'd lose some letters that you really, really wanted, and so you'd have to put those back in, and so there was a lot of that going on. But there are funny letters. There are serious letters that you definitely want the tissue by you, but it covers the war. It covers the emotions of the GIs, and it takes you on a journey, an emotional roller coaster through these letters and in their own voices, and we get to see what that relationship was like, how it built over the years. And we'd always seen it at show tapings, or whenever a veteran came up to Bob, you could see the interaction between them, that there was great respect and great love between them, and we knew that. But until reading these letters, I mean, the letters answer the why of all of those military shows. You just see the heart between the two of them. You know, the GIs and him. It's pretty amazing. It's a pretty powerful story.
Yes, and I vaguely remember watching Bob Hope during the Vietnam War, doing a show. And my little girl mind, maybe I was like 9 or 10, I was thinking, how can they be doing the show during the war? You know, I didn't understand that was, you know, away from the fighting. But my dad served in World War II. My uncle did. And I want the audience to know, to put this in perspective, that because, you know, we're so fast-paced with technology now, but back 70-something, 80 years ago, there was not the technology of today, of course. So to receive 38,000 letters a week, and you know, the mail, I want people to understand, because my dad was in the war, when they mailed a letter to their family, they didn't even know if they would get it. They didn't know how long it would take.
It would.
So
this is
it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, and it would take it weeks, months, sometimes. You know, sometimes it didn't even get to them till, you know, long after the war. This letter would show up. It was pretty amazing. One thing that Bob did, which was really amazing, if a GI could get close enough to him at the show and hand him their mother's phone number, Bob would take those numbers home, and then after this trip home, this long journey home, and before he got into anything else, he would sit on the phone and call these moms and tell them that he had seen their son or daughter, and you know, that they deliver a message or whatever the soldier had wanted him to tell him. It's pretty amazing that there was letter after letter from the moms and dads thanking him for those things that he would do.
That is amazing. That shows what a great humanitarian and caring, loving person Bob Hope was. He set the bar. He set the standard.
He did.
Was Bob Hope the first person to entertain the troops?
Yeah.
I thought so.
the book opens with, though, that there's no truth to the rumor that I entertained the troops at Valley Forge. So that was one of his lines. But yeah, he started in 1941 at March Field, and what had happened, he was, he didn't need any more notoriety. He was already a major, radio star. He had already been on Broadway. He had already made a name for himself, and was, doing just fine. And he, in films, and he got his producer, Hal Capstaff. He's the one that suggested that Bob go to a military base and do his show there. And he had Al had a brother that was stationed there, so there was a little bit of an ulterior motive. But he, Bob couldn't see, what we weren't in the war yet, and he didn't really understand, the connection. What are we going to talk about, and all of that. But he agreed to go, and then tailored his show for the GIs, and went out on stage and just fell in love with the audience because they were so ready for laughter. They were so responsive, and they just had a connection. The audience and him just really hit it off. He loved that audience and continued to love them. And then when the war broke out, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, then Bob wanted to help fight in the war, but President Roosevelt felt that his services were best utilized by encouraging the troops. So he agreed to do that and started entertaining the troops. And Roosevelt, I'm sure, had no idea that this man, this star, this celebrity that had volunteered to do that for World War II was going to carry it on in every single war and every engagement in his lifetime. For 50 years, he would give and give and give to the military. And over those 50 years, that connection, it grew from just this great audience to these became his sons and daughters. The letters are addressed to, dear, that's not Dear Mr. Hope. I mean, some of them are, but the majority are Dear Buddy, Dear Pal, Dear Dad. They even called him Dad, and he'd called them his sons and daughters. It just grew to this amazing heart connection between them all.
Wow, that just thrills. I get goosebumps here in New Jersey. I know that Bob Hope was the real deal. What you saw, that's how he really was. And,
absolutely.
How many actors and actresses would take the time after a long trip and call parents up or, spouses. And I want the audience to be aware of this, Martha, that, back then it took longer to get from Europe to the U.S. They didn't have, the jets like they do today. They didn't have, not everybody had a phone, and some had party lines. So sometimes you might have had to go to a drugstore to use a phone. I know my mom didn't have a phone until she was 16 in their apartment. So this was quite a task for Bob to, sit and call all these people up, and just shows you his dedication. And, Bob's last name, Hope, is just so fitting.
Exactly, and that's his real name, and he certainly put that to use. His talent, he used up every bit of his talent, every bit of his encouragement for other people, and put it out there. And this is all besides the charities that he would donate to and give, do public service announcements for. When we would tape the show, he would, after he had worked all weekend on doing the special, the television special, he would stay afterwards. He'd invite the audience to stay if they wanted to, and he would just go through one after another for different causes and record these messages for them late into the night. And, nobody, this is a side of him that just people didn't you didn't see, you weren't aware of it. Even in the during the war, there's the pictures of him with tens of thousands of GIs on the hillside listening to his show. Well, he would also go out, and wherever he would find different little pockets of troops that didn't get a chance to see them, or they were on another island, and he'd make a special trip over there to entertain for this small group from the back of a Jeep or the back of a truck, and he just did those things and was very giving. He's one of the most giving entertainers we've had in the history of Hollywood. Just amazing man.
Yes. When I say, he set the standard, Bob Hope set the standard, he did. There is no one that can fill his shoes. Nobody
Absolutely.
can ever replace Bob Hope. And I have to say this, my late husband, Matt, loved Bob Hope. And I know he's smiling down on me doing this show because he would say to me that Bob Hope was the best Academy Award host. He loved watching the Bob Hope, movies and specials, but I just had to get that in there. It's my it would be my husband's birthday on Saturday, so your interview today is just the timing. Bob Hope has great timing, and I know he's smiling down on us also. How did Delores deal with all this? I'm curious as to all the time that Bob took to do all these shows and calls.
She was so supportive, and the whole family, so supportive. And had they not been, it may have been a more difficult job for him to do. But they would put off their Christmas and celebrate their Christmas after he got home, and they would travel with him too as well sometimes. They are owed a great deal of credit for their part in all that he was able to do, and he would give them credit as well. I mean, he knew that they were right there with him.
And when Bob Hope went to the hospitals, I could just imagine the faces on the nurses and the doctors and the GIs. Bob Hope represented hope. He represented America and what America stood for. So
Absolutely.
He was an inspiration when he went to do these shows.
There was letter after letter of GIs that he had visited them in the hospital, and how their situation turned around after he had been there, giving them hope, hope and home, and brought it all to them. And he always did it. He never let them see him cry. They'd lose it after they got out of the hospital. But when they were there with the troops, it was all they wanted. They wanted to be positive. They wanted to bring them hope, and there were patients that hadn't spoken in months, and suddenly started speaking to Bob Hope, or that had a positive turn in their condition. Just letter after letter, thanking him for giving them the hope to hang on and to get through whatever it was they were facing.
How did Bob Hope handle all this? I wouldn't call it fame, but just the outpouring of love from these GIs and their families that, he helped so many people. How did he emotionally deal with that? That had to be overwhelming.
Yeah, and that's why, he said when we talked about the book, he said, he wasn't sure he could get through the letters again because they were so, they're just so heart-wrenching and so meaningful to him as well. But he kept it all in perspective. He knew his mission, and that was his mission, was to bring hope and home, and and one GI described it. What Bob's service was helping to keep the chins up off the belt buckles, which was so descriptive of what he would do. You know, he just would lift up their spirits, and again, you know, just letter after letter, thanking him for being there for him and for the troops. And the troops knew above anybody that Bob Hope had their back in not only in every war and in every engagement, but in war and in peacetime. When it was in peace, he didn't forget about the GIs, and he would still visit the hospitals, and he'd still donate whatever they needed. And he would send the GIs, they would ask for things, and he would, you know, whatever they asked for, he would send it to them. He'd make sure, you know, they got what they wanted, or if it was something that he had to take up with a congressman or the president, he'd take it to all the way up the chain. So he had their backs, and he definitely was their you know, friend on the
and a hero
back at home. Yeah.
I mean, Bob Hope. When you think of Bob Hope and all that he had done for the troops, and he was a hero. He was a hero to them. He brought them, you know, hope, and just, you know, when you're sick in a hospital, you know, hurting, that little bit of hope can make a difference. Your mental, you know, state of mind. And I want people to realize, Martha, during World War II, that these GIs did not go home. Maybe they went home if there was an emergency. My dad left for the war and did not come home until 4 years later. He did not see his family. Wow. So there was no seeing your family for 4 years. So when Bob Hope came and you saw Bob Hope, that was had to be a phenomenal part of home.
Oh, I know, and they share that in their letters, and you know what, that he meant home to them. That was exactly what he meant, and it was so good to see someone from home and to talk about the things that were going on back home, and just to give them hope of, you know, that they were going to see that again, and see their families hopefully, and make it through. And he just encouraged them both on stage when he was there, and then throughout these letters he would write back and encourage them to keep on going. And he was no fan of war at all. He was there for the troops, and you know, wanted them to hurry up and stay safe and get home, you know, which unfortunately in so many of the shows, and this is another thing that just, you know, got into his heart, was so many of the shows that a good percentage of the kids and they were kids, there were so many of the 18, 19 years old, and the percentage that would not make it after the show, and, you know, in the next battle they would lose their life. That was very real to him. He knew that was he'd get letter after letter telling him, you know, this, you know, that their buddy was saw the show with them and then was killed in the next battle, or they'd send pictures of their friend who had been. There's this one in the book where he sent a picture of his buddy that Patty Thomas was dancing with him on stage, and, you know, he had been brought up from the audience, and he lost his life in the next battle. So it's just it was real. War was real, and he didn't shy away from being right there with the troops, and in fact, you know, faced danger himself, as far as, you know, sometimes coming in right by the stage, or close enough to where they had to take cover. And he was in a plane crash in Australia. They had to do a water landing, so that there's just a lot of stories in there that he was facing, you know, some, you know, danger himself, but he never shirked his responsibility. He just wanted wanted to be there. Wherever they were at, he wanted to be there. So
incredible. I want to encourage everyone to buy this book. It sounds very heart-touching, heartwarming, and especially if you're a World War II fan, historian, I would definitely read this book. It just sounds so phenomenal, and I would definitely have a box of tissues next to me because I know I would be crying. And Bob Hope, even though he, politically didn't agree with the war, you didn't know that. He was there for the troops to support the men and the women who were fighting. And that's what we should do. That's my opinion.
Yeah. He had made the commitment, and like we already said, he just took that to a whole new level. 50 years of being there for the troops, and they knew it and they felt it. And there are lots of his personal photographs in the book as well. And the readers will get a kick out of, like I said, there's some funny things that the soldiers sent him, and then there's the serious letters. But lots of really good. If you like to read other people's mail, this really takes you into World War II, and it puts you there and lets you know what that greatest generation faced. Yes,
they faced quite a lot, and there won't be another generation like them. They were a tough, strong, dedicated group of men and women.
Yeah, absolutely, and so many young kids, and doing what they did at barely out of high school, and some even dropped out, to enlist. Yeah.
Yes. People today, young people, I don't think they're taught history, and I want them to know. Maybe because my dad was in World War II and my uncle, I want people to realize when Pearl Harbor happened, they didn't have to beg people to serve their country. They went as fast as they could to the recruit station to serve. They quit school. They lied about their age. Even
they did. They did.
To serve.
Exactly. They just they just felt the call and they went, and like you say, for the duration. They went for the duration, and it was up and down. There was an awful lot of loss before there was victory. So
yes, there was. I just finished reading a book about World War II, the nurses, and a lot of people don't realize nurses and doctors died in the war, during the war, and it's just incredible. The sacrifices. They put on their backpacks. They were dropped out of an airplane. They never probably even left home before, and here they were in Europe. Right. Or
most of them probably hadn't left home. Yeah.
Right.
That was their first time away, and the loneliness, and it comes through in the letters how lonely they are, and just. They share their story. They told Bob things they wouldn't even tell their family probably, but they just their fears and their the dangers, and pretty incredible generation. Really gives you respect when you meet a World War II veteran, or any of the wars. When you meet a vet, they put their life on the line.
Yes, they did. And they did it wholeheartedly, and they just were a fantastic group of men and women. Martha, I want to thank you so much for coming on my show. I'm still so honored and privileged to have you on. Where can people purchase Dear Bob?
Well, they can definitely any of the stores that are opened back up, support them, and they can get it from the University Press of Mississippi. That's the publisher. They can get it from bobhope.org / Dear Bob Moore, and that they can order it off of there, and internet bookstores as well. So it's out there, and if your local bookstore doesn't have it, they can certainly order it for you. And like you say, I think he's staring down at us and hopefully very pleased that his kids, his sons and daughters, are in these pages and sharing their story.
Well, I would like to dedicate this podcast to Bob Hope, if that's okay, in memory of Bob Hope and the men and the women that served our country in all wars. This show is dedicated to them and their memory, and I am proud to say that my dad was a World War II Navy veteran. Served on the Bunker Hill. And
we thank
my uncle
for
was
his
in
service and all of this.
Thank you. Thank you so much again, Martha. Thank you, audience, for listening. If you missed any of this podcast, you can catch it again wherever you listen to podcasts. It's free to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy. I'm on all podcast outlets, the majority of them, Spotify speakers, just a couple examples. And I want to thank Jeannie White, station manager, Passionate World Talk Radio Network, for producing the show, writing the blog, and thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio Network, for making this radio station and giving people a platform. And I want to thank you again, Martha, for coming on. And this is in memory of Bob Hope. And Bob, you can hear me. Thank you for your years of service. I want to thank the Hope family. You supported your dad through all these years of service, made sacrifices. And, folks, we need to remember our veterans, men and women. If you don't agree with the war, that's fine. Support the troops. They're doing their job. They're protecting us. And I want to thank those who have served, and I want to thank those who are still serving. God bless you. Folks, this is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Until we chat again, please be kind. Bye, everybody.